Being your own boss as a filmmaker is not an easy line of work, so this week I'm sharing 10 things I've learnt from being a freelance filmmaker. Hello, my name is Cade and this is DSLRguide. So freelance filmmaking is a great way to get some contacts and to gain experience while at the same time actually making money. And it's actually not that hard to get started with being paid to make films, but the key is to then work your way up to the point where you're doing projects that you feel really inspired about. You know, maybe weddings are where you start, but then you work up to doing adverts and kind of bigger projects. This is what you really want to do in the long run. So the first tip is to focus on story and people. So let's say you're making a promotional video for a pet shop. Well, my initial thought would be, okay, right, well, we'll interview the manager and we'll ask him things like, why did you start the shop? What is your shop going to benefit to people who have pets? You know, just those kind of standard questions. You could interview him, get some shots of the pet shop, and then edit it together with some music and you've got a standard promo video. But why not take it a bit further than that? Why not find one of their customers who is a kid who's really close with their pets? Why not follow their story as they go to the pet shop and they find their friend, for example? Or if you're someone who works at the shop who is really quirky, why not do a kind of day in the life of someone who just kind of lives and breathes pets? So this is just a very silly example, but hopefully that shows you how you don't just have to have one person saying, this is why I think this pet shop is great. You can actually find a story within that, and then that will still kind of promote a general positivity about that pet shop if you show, you know, the close relationship between a kid and their pet, or between someone who works there who's really interesting, you know. So these are the sort of things that I think you should be on the lookout for when you do get these kind of jobs, and it's a case of talking to a client, putting these ideas towards them and saying, what do you think about this? The next one is to make short lists or storyboards. So most people tend to think that storyboards are only for narrative films, but I think the more planning you can do before the shoot, the better everything will go in the end. So if you have a really clear idea of what kind of thing you want, all the way down to the number of shots, the order of shots, and what kind of things you're looking out for, then it means you don't turn up and just try and film everything, you know. Now obviously you have to be completely open to kind of adapting your thing, or maybe even just scrapping that and going in a completely different direction. But I think there's absolutely loads of value in getting some planning out and kind of thinking about how to do those creative things. Like I've said before, get the creative stuff done before the shoot, then when you're actually at the shoot, you can focus on the kind of practical things. So every freelancer will have times when their work really slows down and they're not seeming to get any jobs. So my advice for that is to just get on the phone, you know, or email or turn up to businesses. So if you're just starting out or you haven't got any work, then I think you should be spending at least an hour a day phoning up, you know, local businesses, emailing them, and also turning up in person. The idea being that if you talk to 10 people and say, look, your website, I've seen your website, but you don't have a video on there. I think video is a great way to promote yourself. You know, if you kind of pitch yourself and then offer a price, or if you're just getting started, then do it for free. But if you do that with 10 people, see what happens, you know. So I think if you're not getting any jobs, you just need to put yourself out there and just start asking lots of people, because you can't expect people to come to you when you just start out. So usually the way that you show potential clients your work is by a demo reel, a short montage of all of your best work. So I've got some tips for that. Number one is keep it short as possible. I would say anything less than 2 minutes is good, but you really don't want them to be bored. The second thing is that your reel is an extension of your creativity. So if your reel is just a standard montage of some nice shots, then is that really showing you in the best light? So, you know, you've got to be creative and try and make your reel stand out, because that is really going to give the best impression to your clients. But the important thing is to remember who your audience is. So if you're doing a wedding, then why not give them a wedding reel, you know, which is a montage of all your best weddings. Same thing for if it's a corporate video, you know, it's good to have a number of reels, because some of those shots in some of the other reels aren't going to be relevant at all to your clients. That's my tip, is to make it relevant, even if this means having multiple reels. So the next tip is don't write off working for free. So even if you've done loads of paid projects, sometimes doing a free project might actually be the most valuable thing that you do all year. So for example, if someone came to me and said, I'm making a big budget film, Hollywood, you know, everything's kind of like a proper film set, and they said, would you work on it for free? I'd be like, yes, absolutely, because there's great contacts there, and that'd be a great sort of thing to be able to tell people, oh, yes, I worked on that film. If someone came to me who was a nobody in terms of the filmmaking world, but they had an absolutely genius idea and I really believed in their project, then I would also work on it for free. And similarly, if I had a chance to work with, say, a really successful band making them a music video, then I could see, right, this has actually got potential to get me some exposure, so yes, I'm also going to do that for free. But there are lots of reasons why you would want to work for free, and it's kind of a case of weighing it up and seeing whether you think it's worth it. But don't write it off just because it's free. Okay, so the next tip is to try a whole range of things. So let's say that you're a corporate video guy most of the time, but then you just decide to do a music video for one of your friends. They don't pay you much, but you decide to do it just for fun. And then you find that after that, all of their kind of musician friends who are in the same circles, they start coming to you. And before you know it, you've got loads of work doing music videos, which might be something that you preferred. So my advice would be to kind of put out as many of those things as possible, to do a whole range of things, because clients can become very loyal very quickly, and then your name gets passed around and you can find yourself with lots of jobs to choose from, so you can turn down some and just take the best jobs. Okay, so let's talk about how much you should charge. So if you've been doing it for a while, you probably have a good idea of what sort of things you'd be happy with. You look at how much time it's going to take, and then you say, well, I wouldn't do it for any less than this amount. And a good way to explain this to a client, I actually split up the cost into how many times I'm working on set, how many times I'm working editing, my equipment, as well as hard drive space and backup space. So hopefully that will kind of help to explain to them that yes, it seems like a lot of money, but it all kind of, here's how it breaks up, and that I think makes it a bit more easy for them to understand. Now the next thing is, sometimes I think you should charge more than you perhaps thought, because often what I've found is that clients have an idea of how much they would be happy to pay for, and if you ask for something lower than that, then they kind of think, well, why is this so cheap? There must be a reason. So then they go and find someone else who is as expensive as what they wanted. So often they kind of judge you based on how much you're charging. So one thing I like to do is charge more than I actually wanted, because firstly, if they take it, then brilliant, you've got some extra money. But also, if they say, well, that's too much, then you can offer them things like having more time to edit it, a later deadline, or maybe you're doing less hours on the shoot, and then you can kind of bring the price down to what they wanted. And that way you're both happy, because you're getting a better price and they feel like you're actually someone who's not selling themselves short. And finally, if you're watching this and thinking that you could see yourself as a freelancer, this would be my one piece of advice, that you should always bring it back to story. I think there's a misconception that corporate videos and non-fiction videos don't have a storyline, but I think the most effective documentaries and the most effective non-fiction films, whether it's a music video or a corporate video or a documentary, they always have that plot and they always have characters, even though it's a kind of more realistic way of doing it. If you always consider those things and bring it back to that, then you can make anything interesting. Think of the example of the pet shop, and hopefully that gives you some ideas for ways that you can find an angle on something that's happening, rather than just doing the kind of standard boring interviewing someone about what they think of something. So that's it for this week. I would also like to say actually that I didn't mention much about working with clients, because I actually have done a whole video about that. So I'll put a link in the description and on the blog post where you can find that. And I also put some related videos on the blog post which have inspired me a lot about doing freelancing. So that's it for this week, and I'll see you next time.